2. Don't worry about all the bad things. So long as you love Our Lady, now Our Lady of Fatima, so long as you pray your rosary, so long as you feel spiritual, so long as you raise your children with a supernatural view and take care of them, so long as you tell them to pray, tell them to be holy, tell them to wear long dresses and so on, which is all a good thing. But don't tell them to be apostles and confessors of the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. The cardinals were terrified of that girl. And the bishops were terrified of that girl. And Pope Gregory XI, he had on one side all the bishops and cardinals saying, don't listen to that girl. And he heard that little girl. Gregory XI, right now, would be burning in a place called hell if it wasn't for that girl. When we go to heaven, we will see St. Catherine of Sienna, a giant in heaven. This magnificent giant, beautiful giant in heaven. And at her feet, there'll be a little bitty pygmy with a tiara on his head.
I'm Pope Gregory. I was a pope when Catherine was alive. Really?
About the size of his toenail. And he'll be walking around heaven with her at her toe. And he'll be happy to be at her toe. He barely saved his soul. Why did he save it? Because of Catherine. And you ask Gregory, the Pope. Gregory, you were the Pope. You were the head of the Roman Catholic Church. How dare you that a little girl who just studied no theology, how dare you a little girl who didn't know any doctrine, never went to catechism class, how dare you let her correct you? Well, you ask Gregory, he will tell you, if it wasn't for that little girl, I would be in hell. I love that little girl. For all eternity, I will stay at her toes. For all eternity, I will stay next to her. Because she was my ticket to heaven. And Catherine is a giant saint in heaven. Gregory is a little bitty, maybe that big, probably a little smaller. But he's in heaven. And he's in heaven because of her. And the devil knows the power of the speaking of the truth. The devil knows that power very well. And he's terrified of it. Because little Catherine spoke the truth. It shook the whole of Christendom. It changed the history of the world. And the devil is terrified of it. And he was afraid of some Catholics standing up for the truth. Of some Catholics spreading it. And remember the way of our church. The shepherd is the shepherd of souls. But he's also a weak human being. There isn't a case of one single shepherd. One priest. One bishop or pope. Who has ever been able to fulfill his duty without some one of the sheep saying, do the work of God. Some one of the sheep encouraging him to continue. Some one of the sheep saying, stay away from modernism. Stay away from Arianism. Stay away from Protestantism. Stay away from Calvinism. Stay away from all the great heresies of each of the ages. And stand firm with the faith. You feed us the real faith, and we will follow you. Gregory XI was named after the first Gregory, the saint, the great Gregory. The great Gregory, what did he call himself? He was the Holy Father. But he was the first Holy Father, the first Pope to say, don't call me Pope and Holy Father. He was actually humble, unlike the present humble guy. He was a liar and an enemy of God. But Gregory was really humble. And St. Gregory the Great said, I am the Servus Servorum Dei. And he wrote it down in the end of his name. And in honor of his greatness and his holiness and his humility, every Pope writes this down after him. But he did it the first time. I am the Servus Servorum Dei. I am the slave of the slaves of God. What's the reason? Because the priest is a minister. What is a minister? When you sit down at table, the minister is the one who brings you food. That's the waiter. The minister is the one who cooks the food and brings it to you. That's the cook. That's the minister. So who's the most important? The one that brings the food or the one that eats it? This is more important. Eating it is more important. The minister is the one that brings the food. And if he brings poison, what do? You kill him. If he brings poison, you'll fire him. If he brings poison, you'll get rid of him. And the priest is the minister of God. What must he do? He must bring the food of the real body, the true blood, the true soul, the true divinity of Jesus Christ to your souls. He must bring the true doctrine of Jesus Christ to your souls. He must bring the true cross to your souls. And if you don't get the right cross, and you don't get the right doctrine, and you don't get the right sacrifice, is not the shepherd of God, and he's not the minister of God, but he's the shepherd of the Satan, which is actually a wolf, and he is the minister of the devil. The true minister of God, he must bring the food that is the right food. In other words, the sheep have to attune their tastes. The sheep have responsibility as well. They must attune their tastes. They must recognize, is this the food of our fathers? This is the same thing that I ate when I was a child. Is it the same kind of food? Is it the same doctrine that my mother ate, and my father ate, and my grandfather, and my great-grandfather, and my great-grandmother, and so on? Is it the same food? What made him a great minister? Tradidi quotacipi. I have handed down what I have received, not something new. Now the ministers stopped handing down what they were supposed to receive. They started changing their ways. They started changing their spirit. They started changing their teaching. And Catherine stood up and said, no, follow God. She never read one lecture inside of the church like these modern feminists. She never preached a single sermon. The church is the domain of Christ and his men. But like I mentioned in the first sermon, at some point the priest has to walk out of the church. At some point the man has to walk out of the church. You go outside, that's the domain of the girls. And they will talk your ears off. And there they will destroy you and eat you up and gobble you up. So let them stay. You want to stay in church, you pray as long as you want. We're coming outside and then you're mine. Catherine and Sienna never preached a sermon in the church. She never read the lesson in the church. But when that pope and that bishop came out in the world, they were supposed to be carrying that gospel. How come you're not carrying it? You talk the gospel of the pulpit. How come I don't hear it out here? You claim you're following the gospel of the church. I don't see the gospel out here. You follow the gospel. You can quote all your theologians, quote all your doctors in these modern ways. But I read, and I know the truth. The truth is that Simon Peter died in Rome. And Simon Peter is the vicar of Christ who ruled in the city of Rome. And I checked my map. Avignon is not in Rome. Move. And if you don't move, you shall go to hell. That's called being judgmental. That's called being judgmental. And what do we say? When we are going to Rome, says Father Stalin, he's just coming back from Superior meeting, we're going to pray. We're not going to point the finger. It is not to judge. It is not to raise the finger and become the judge of the living and the dead, but it is to pray, and to do penance. Sounds beautiful. Sounds so very beautiful. You know a good time to pray and do penance? If you see a man drowning in a pool, and a house on fire, you don't like water, and you don't like fire, you know what you should do? Pray. Pray. I really hope that the fire stops. I hope the guy doesn't drown. Is that what you must do? Our Lord